everyone, and my, has it been a long time. So, as we can see by the title and by the fact that my face is not in this video, we're doing something different here. Today, we will be doing a deck profile of a Pokemon trading card game deck that I have made. So, this video will be split into different sections. We will first be talking about the Pokemon in the deck. We will then be moving on to the energies that I have put into this deck. And then finally we'll be we will be looking at the trainer cards that I have in this deck. And the different sections will be put into the description below if you wish to hop around the video and only see a certain part, which I don't know why you would, because it's a deck profile video. You probably would want to see the entire thing. Am I right? So enough of that, let's just get into this. So the most important cards in this deck are going to be these two Pokemon right here. We have Alolan Diglett and Alolan Dugtrio. So you're going to want to run a full 4 line of these. As you can see, we have 4 cards here, 4 cards here, full 4 line. So this deck revolves around these 2 cards. Mainly this card right here, this Alolan Dugtrio. And its ability, well, main attack, as we can see, is Gold Rush. And it is a non-energy required move, and it does 30 damage times the amount of metal energy that you discard from your hand. Now, this can get very, very ridiculously high damage counts if you have a lot of steel energy in your deck. Now the Diglett is not as important, it's just there so we can get into the Dugtrio. Iron Head is a good, it's an okay attack if you don't start off with a Dugtrio, if you don't have a Dugtrio in your opening hand, and it can do some damage if you're lucky enough, but the Alolan Dugtrio's attack is more consistent. So the next Pokemon we have is this Magnemite right here. Now I only run 1 copy in my deck. You can change up the amount of these guys that you run. Yeah, personally I only use 1. Now I only use 1 of these because Searching Magnet, which is the main reason I have this guy in the deck for, allows me to search 3 Metal Energy cards and put them into my hand. Now it's okay in the fact that I have a lot of draw power in this deck, and another card that we will see later on in the video that allows me to get some steel energy out quite quickly, and I have so much steel energy in the deck anyways that it doesn't really matter, that I'll just draw into a good amount of them, probably starting hand. But it's good in here to have in here as a backup plan. You want specifically this Magnemite, the one that has Searching Magnet, because some of the other Magnemites don't have it. So this is the important one that you want to have if you decide to build this deck as well. The next 2 cards are Prism Star Solgaleo and Dialga GX. Now, these 2 cards are sort of more heavy hitter cards. Dialga is not as important, but it's still helpful to have in there. Solgaleo, on the other hand, is quite a very good card to have in this deck, as Radiant Star, which is a 1 steel energy move, allows you to search, attach steel energy to any Pokemon that you have in play per amount of active Pokemon that your opponent has. And you can, obviously, since you're cycling steel energy into your discard pile because of the Alolan Dugtrio, you're gonna be able to get a good amount of steel energy on this card in a quite efficient way, which will allow you to use Corona Impact, which is, even though you won't be able to attack next turn with this card, it still does a good amount of damage that can knock out most Pokemon. This deck uses a lot of hit and run tactics, as we will see with Dialga, with his main purpose in this deck is for Timeless GX, which allows you to take another turn after you attack with this Pokemon. And Overclock is a good ability to have on in this deck, as it allows you to draw up until you have 6 cards in your hand, which is good for 1 energy, at least in this deck. So these two guys, somewhat important, but not as important as the Alolan Dugtrio and Magnemite. So next up, we will be looking at energy cards that I have in this deck. So we'll start off with special energies that I have in this deck. And the special energies I run in this deck are a double dragon energy, primarily for the Dialga, 1 shield energy, as it is the only one I had at my disposal, and it's just another steel energy, basically wouldn't add effect. And as you could probably see, I also have a unit energy, which is either a steel, electric, or psychic energy. And this is just here for convenience, as it also gives a colorless energy. So these 3 cards, out of these 3 cards, this one has the most importance in terms of with the Dialga, and these other 2 cards are just there for utility. Next up, we have a lot of steel energy. 19 steel energy in this deck, which can be cycled in and out with obviously with the attack of Prism Star Solgaleo Radiant Star. So yeah, not that much of a long segment. This is just showing you the energy breakdowns. 19 steel energy, along with the 3 special energy, double dragon, shield, and unit. Next up, we have trainer cards. We run 1 stadium in this deck, and that is Mount Coronet. Now this card allows you to search 2 steel energy in your discard pile and add it to your hand. Now it has to be 2, it doesn't say up to 2, so you have to wait until there's 2 steel energy in your discard pile, but that shouldn't be hard considering the main idea of the deck. Next up, we have supporter cards, and the supporter cards that I run in this deck are, I run a Pokemon fan club, which allows you to search 2 basic Pokemon and put them into my hand. I run a How, or I believe it might be 2 copies of How, or it might be, yeah, it's 2 copies of How. I run 2 copies of How, which are just straight draw 3s. Not the best, but for what I have, it's good. I run a Professor Kukui, which is a draw 2, and your attacks deal 20 damage for the remainder of the round. I run a Cynthia, which is a shuffle cards back into your deck and draw 6. I run a Lily, which is a pretty good draw trainer if you get an opening hand. I run an N. Now I'm using this copy of N because I don't have the reprinted N, but this is, it's fairly good early game. It basically, you shuffle your hand into the deck and you draw depending on the remaining amount of prize cards. Now, as you can see, with these next few cards, you'll see that this deck would be not legal in Standard. It uses cards that, as we can see with 2 copies of Shauna, that this deck uses cards that are not in rotation and therefore would not be, at least Standard tournament legal. So Shauna I use because it's a shuffle into the deck and draw 5 cards. I run a Professor Juniper, which is a discard, draw 7. Now, if I have mainly energies in my hand, then that's fairly good. And then I have a Wally, which is a search for an evolution and evolve, which is good for when I have Diglets out on the field. Next up, we will be looking at items. Now, the items in my deck that I run are 2 Ultra Balls, which are good since they are a discard and just search a Pokemon. I run 2 Professor's Letters, which allow me to draw into basic energy. I run 2 escape boards, which I will explain why in a minute. No, actually I'll just explain now. The energy boards have very good utility with the Pokemon, as we can see with Pokemon like Solgaleo and Dialga, who have retreat costs of 3 each. It lowers that down to 1, so the hit and run tactics become a lot easier to pull off. Magnemite, Alolan Dugtrio, and Alolan Diglett each have 1 retreat cost each, as we can see. 1 retreat cost, 1 retreat cost, and 1 retreat cost, so that immediately lowers their retreat costs down to 0, which allows me to just cycle them as I please. Next up, we run 1 copy of Buddy Buddy Rescue, which allows me to gain one of my lost Pokemon back into my hand, will each me and the opponent. Now I run 1 Olivia, solely to just search for that Dialga GX in an easier fashion. Now, however, if I start with Dialga GX in my hand, or it's in my prize pool, this card becomes a brick. So if you have something to switch out for Olivia, I recommend you do that. I personally do not, so I run Olivia in this deck. I run 2 Timer Balls, which are good for getting evolutions into my hand, specifically, mainly, well, the only evolution I have in my deck is a... Wait a minute, why was Olivia here? I just realized that Olivia should be with the supporter cards. I apologize for that misstep. But yeah, Olivia is here. Yeah, so 2 Timer Balls good for getting the evolutions into my hand. I run 2 Nest Balls, which are good for getting the basic Pokemon into my hand, obviously, since that's what they're used for. And then I run 2 Energy Retrievals, which are good for cycling those used energies from the discard pile into my hand and then just dealing out more damage. And then I also run a single Big Malasada, which is another card that I recommend that that if you have something better, you can switch it out, like maybe with another Energy Retrieval or another Ultra Ball, something along those lines. So that is all the cards I run in the deck. So how about we start up a game, and we will see where it goes from there. We'll see how what kind of opening hands you could do with this deck, and I'll show you that this deck can be consistent, at least with the opening hands, but there are other times where your opponent will get a lot of mulligan cards and you'll have to keep mulliganing over and over again. So as we can see right now, let's start. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If we see, let's see here, we got nothing, so we'd have to mulligan. Now this deck can't have a lot of mulligans, as you can possibly see. Oh, there's a Diglett. Okay. Let's say the opponent cut. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And as we can see, we mulligan again. Now, you will mulligan a lot, but let's just say, we just won't shuffle 4, 5, 6, 7. We'll just keep going until we get something. Yeah, so we got a Diglett, a Dugtrio, another Diglett, Professor Juniper, Unit Energy, and a Timer Ball. Now, this could be this is a fairly decent opening hand, as we would obviously put down the 2 Digletts, 1 active, 1 benched. We have a Dugtrio, we have a Timer Ball, and we have a 2 energy. Now that's fairly consistent, fairly good opening hand. Took, I think, 2 or 3 mulligans. And we would have had a slow burn game at that point, trying to build up energy, while also trying to stall out your opponent. And basically, this deck is not an OTK deck, because you can hardly have OTK decks in this deck. It's a fairly hard-hitting deck that can easily deck yourself out with the amount of draw power and with the amount of discarding you're doing with this deck. So with that, we've reached the end of the video, and if you've liked this kind of style of video with the deck profiles. I have many other decks that I would like, or will love to do profiles on, including Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Dragon Ball Super TCG. I have a couple Magic decks that I could look at, mainly one. The rest are pre-made decks. And this is going to be one of the new types of videos that I'm going to be putting on this channel. Mainly these kind of deck profile videos and other kind of videos where you're not looking at my ugly mug. And, well, some of them you're going to have to look at my ugly mug. I apologize for that. But aside from that, enough of my rambling. Have a good day, everyone. See you next time.